All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I think everybody has kind of gotten settled. We might have a few other folks join us as we go along. Thank you all for coming to this recording and production info session. Hopefully the information presented here will be really helpful to you as you either consider applying or continue with your current application to DU and the Lamont School of Music. We'll just what we're going to do here is, let me advance this. We'll just introduce ourselves, and then we'll look over the program, the curriculum that goes with it. We'll talk a little bit about the application and the portfolio and the audition requirements, which I know many of you are in the midst of. We'll have our two student panelists here talk a bit about what it's like to be a student in the recording production program at Lamont. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions at the end. Please, at any point throughout, drop your questions into the Q&A functionality here in Zoom. And either we'll answer them as we go or we'll save them for the end, but we'll be sure to get your questions answered. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment here. So I'm Stephen Campbell, I'm the Director of Admission at Lamont. And I would like to throw this on over to Professor Michael Schulze to introduce himself and the students who are here with us.
Hello, everybody. This is Kylan Furman and Benjamin Colott, two students in recording and production. Ben is classical piano emphasis, but he also does EDM. And Kylan, I forget your guitar, right? Jazz guitar concentration. Kylan does electronic music and has numerous bands and so forth. And I think Ben and Colin are good examples of the kind of students that are coming to the program these days. They've got interests that kind of span widely between, playing the guitar and doing synthesizers or piano or whatever. The program here, let me just give you a little bit of idea of what I do, who I am, and where I came from. I was many years ago a trombone major at University of Illinois, and they had one of the first electronic music programs in the world. So I got interested in that, and also in the audio engineering recording operation there. I learned how to record music there. I worked in the electronic music studios, became a jazz player, played jazz and commercial music successfully for 20 years or so. Wound up working at Oberlin Conservatory of Music as director of audio services, and also taught a class there for 10 years before I came here to Lamont, where I started the Bachelor of Music Recording Production major. Started the program back in 2003, officially became a major about 10 years later or so. And these days I'm a composer. I do electronic music. For 4 years, I did electronic music for the Boulder Ballet Company in Boulder, Colorado, which was kind of like 20th century minimalism combined with various styles of EDM. Did a project with them on the last show where we put wireless sensors on the dancers so that their movements could control the music in real time. So I do a lot of experimentation like that. A lot of different kinds of music. Right now I'm working on a project that I hope to be playing live in the spring and summer here, which is, it's a rock band instrumentation. Stylistically, it incorporates kind of like tribal kind of music. There's a band called Heilung, Healing in German, Heilung. You should check them out. They're really interesting. Music like that, a little bit of metal influence from a great band called Melvins, and more mid-20th century minimalist compositional influences. So I'm involved in all kinds of stuff, including rock and roll and electronic music and various kinds of composition. I am sitting here in Wesley Electronic Music Studio A. Ben over there is over in Studio B. Ben, turn your camera around for a minute and show them. So Ben is in the second room there. There you go, 5.1 monitoring system, analog synthesizers over to his right, some Arturia and some Korg, some old vintage 90s synths there in the corner. And I'm over in Studio A, where we also have 5.1 surround monitoring. I'll show you a couple of things close up. We may get a little seasick here. I apologize. I'm going to move my camera as I travel. There we go. So if it will focus, these are Focal Alpha 8 5.1 system. Nice MIDI controller there. We have an Arturia Matrix Brute analog synthesizer. There's a Moog Subharmonicon. This is a modular synthesis system. This is the Eurorack format modular system. About all of these modules, almost all of them, from WM Devices here in Denver, Colorado. Another bigger modular synthesis system that we bought back in 2003 from a company based in Canada. And a modular video synthesizer system that is generating all kinds of cool stuff that will react to audio if I want it to. And what else? Computer system, Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton Live, lots and lots of plugins. Let me put this down, make some noise for you for a minute and show you what's going on in here. So yeah, just some of the fun stuff that we are doing right now. So this is, well, we all get seasick again. This is the electronic music end of the operation. Over at the School of Music, I think Stephen will put some slides up in a bit if he hasn't already, where we have the multi-track recording studio, a really well-equipped studio with a beautiful 24 or 48 channel API analog mixing console, Pro Tools, mixing and mastering room also with surround sound, where students record their own bands, they record jazz combos, they record classical concerts, they work on video and film scoring, and even video game music these days. So that's the brief intro. Stephen, I think I'll hand it back to you unless you have more questions for me right now.
No, that's great. And you know, as we go through this, Kylan, Benjamin, Professor Schulze, you can pipe up and add whatever you'd like as we go through. Really, what I'll do next is just quickly give an overview of the curricular elements of the program, and then the application process, or the parts that are a little more important to recording production applicants. And then we'll let you, Professor Schulze, talk a little more about the portfolio, because that gets into some technical things that I think will be helpful. And hopefully Kylan and Ben will have a chance for either or both of you to share a little bit about your experience as a student. So let me pull these slides back up for a moment. All right, let me drop in the chat if you can't see that. What you're seeing here is some of the course listings for this program. So first and foremost, this is a recording arts major that is combined with a music major. This is one of the biggest questions I get as an admission person for this program, right? Do I have to audition on an instrument to be a recording and production major at Lamont? And the answer is yes. And there are a number of reasons for that. But one of the big reasons, as you can see from the course listing, you're doing a lot of music and a lot of performance, right? So this is a recording arts program that has the music theory, oral skills, music history, all of those elements that you'd see in a music program combined. And if you look there at the bottom of the right-hand side of that slide, you have lessons in ensemble. So you are actually continuing to perform and perfect your craft on your instrument outside of the recording studio, while you're also doing all of the wonderful things that Professor Schulze just mentioned. And you can see the audio production and audio practicum classes represented in that as well. What is not included here are the non-music credits. So it's 194 total credit hours, and 128 of them are from music. The rest you'll be taking in the common curriculum and some electives as well. I can drop the full status sheet in there for you in just a minute. As far as application is concerned, I just mentioned it before, right? You are expected to perform an audition on the instrument that you'll be taking lessons. So as part of the admission process, you are going to perform an audition on your instrument for the faculty on that instrument. So it's kind of maybe a three-tiered process, right? You apply to DU, you submit the Common App, and then you apply to Lamont. You play an audition for the applied faculty, and then you submit a recording and production portfolio for Professor Schulze and the recording and production faculty. So there are kind of multiple components if you're going to apply to the Bachelor of Music and Recording and Production. These bottom three bullets here lay out what is required for the recording and production portfolio. So you need at least one audio recording that you've engineered by yourself. You can see a little more detail there as well. You submit a 1 to 2 page technical explanation of how and why you recorded it. Give some elements about what you did, right? Include the list of microphones, other input devices, etc. And then finally, a statement of your future plans. Why are you doing this? Why are you interested in doing this at DU? And what would you like to do when you graduate? It's important to say that this is distinct from the application that you will write for the Common App, which isn't music specific. It can be on a number of prompts. So this is a separate thing. So when we say you have the audition, that's one component. The portfolio, that's another component. And that portfolio component consists of these three items: the recording, the technical explanation, and then the statement of future plans. This is always something that's a little, can be challenging to keep track of for our applicants, right? There's a lot going on here, and we can't consider you unless all of these components are complete. And so throughout the process, some of you on this call may have already gotten an email like this from me or from my colleague, Angela Mitchell, just saying, hey, I see your recording and production portfolio. That's great. You're missing this component of that portfolio. Once that comes in, we'll check it off. So a recurring theme, if you've tuned into any of our webinars, is don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. We are here to help you navigate this process. And I know it's a cliche, but there are no dumb questions. It's confusing and different people go through it in different ways. So reach out, ask questions of me, ask questions of Professor Schulze. We will help. So a little more information about that audio recording. And so Professor Schulze, I'd like to throw this back over to you to cover some of this and also anything else you think is important to touch on for that portfolio.
Sure. And on the previous slide, we still have a typo we need to fix. It microphones used and type of processing. It's not type of pressing.
Oh, good. Okay.
Processing, vinyl pressing out of processing. Right. So what we're looking for is for your engineering demo to show us the level of skill that you have in recording, mixing and mastering music. So the best kinds of things to submit are recordings, multi-track recordings that you've mixed to stereo, and you're just going to submit the stereo audio files. Hopefully they include some real instruments as well as electronic instruments or virtual instruments, some stuff that was recorded with microphones, a vocal track or a guitar amp or something like that. Reason for that is that it's a little hard to evaluate engineering skill if everything is electronic. It can be difficult. So if you're an electronic musician, just like put a vocal track or something in there. We get a lot of recordings by students, by prospective students of their bands. And as far as the last thing about going into commercial recording studios, what doesn't help us is if you take your band into a studio and hire them to do your recording, that's not your engineering. I need to hear your engineering, and I would rather hear, for example, a recording that you did at home with only 1 or 2 microphones with whatever you've got, rather than something where you went into a studio and paid to use expensive equipment. I just want to hear what you can do with what you've got. You know, when you get here, as I said, you'll be learning to record all kinds of music, popular music, jazz, classical. A lot of my students are multi-instrumentalists. I play guitar, bass, keyboards, I sing. I don't play trombone anymore. Too much work involved. So yeah, I think that kind of, I think that covers it.
I'll pull this down for a second. Folks, I'm gonna ask.
Pan over so we can see your synth rack over there. Kylan's, there you go. Kylan's got his own modular setup. Sweet.
Well, I'm gonna ask Kylan and Ben to share maybe just an anecdote about the program. So something that you've enjoyed, Kylan and Ben, or some advice you have for applicants as they go through the process. And folks, while they're answering those questions, drop your questions into the Q&A, because we are not going to cover any more planned content, right? We just wanted to give you an overview of the program and cover some frequently asked questions. So put your questions into the Q&A while Kylan and Ben are talking, and we'll spend as much time as you need after this to get those questions answered. So Kylan or Ben, either of you want to jump on first?
I can say some stuff.
Thanks.
I think one of the main things that I was tuned into right away after coming to Lamont was the quality of the facilities overall. And, you know, keep in mind, I came in last year as a freshman during 2020, so I wasn't even able to, you know, fully take advantage of what DU and the recording production program had to offer. However, when I was near the end of the year, it was just really mind-blowing. If you are someone that, I think the best thing about this program is really just, if you're someone who, you know, you're a creative person, if you have projects you want to complete and you don't have the gear or the, you know, the knowledge to see out your creative endeavors, then this really is like the program for you. Because I mean, if you're into electronic music, everything in Wesley is, I mean, it's more than I'm even ever gonna use. It is just so much. And then if you're into, you know, more traditional, you know, rock stuff, punk stuff, jazz stuff, the studio facilities are wonderful. So yeah, just all the facilities are top notch, and it really allows you to explore what you are interested in. This program is definitely not gonna, you know, push you towards a style you're not interested in. It's not gonna box you in creatively. It's all about, you know, it's all about reinforcing the strengths that you have already as a musician. I think that's the best thing about the program.
Yeah, I can also add on to that a little bit. Is that as soon as I came into Lamont and the production classes and stuff like that, I've kind of realized that it's a really, really tightly knit community here. And the class sizes are really small, which is really important for a student. Pretty much all of the students and professors are on first name basis here. And you kind of speak with your professors closer as friends than and mentors, you know, rather than you know, just professors. So it's really nice kind of having that attention to you as a student. And then the classes, my biggest class here is 15 to 16 students. So it's nice just being on a first name basis and actually knowing everybody in your classes, unlike other big universities.
I'm seeing a question.
Individual class size is like 5, 6, 7, 8 right now. Ben means class. It means I think you're talking to the whole program right now. We've got maybe.
Yeah, those are my biggest classes. I think our production class is like 6 people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ben, because so Lamont is only around 270 students. We have a cap of 300. We'll never be bigger than that. DU is around 12,000, split roughly equally undergrad and grad. So to Ben's point, Lamont classes, even the biggest Lamont classes outside of ensembles, of course, are relatively small. It's pretty tight knit, right? You're going to know everybody that's in your class, know everybody that's in your incoming class as well, right? Because we're looking to bring in right around 50 undergrads any given year, and more graduate students, of course. And then within the recording and production program, it's changed a little bit recently. Michael, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but roughly 5 students a year. That's an undergrad only program. So that program in particular, you really know everybody, right? It's a tight knit group for sure.
Yeah, and you start right away on the audio production classes, and you start working in these 3 studios over here. Beginning of freshman year, you're in these rooms, unattended, doing your own stuff.
Yeah, and I think Kylan was just pointing out that we have a question. So the question is this: is an applicant allowed to submit multiple different recordings as part of the portfolio, or should they limit their submission to the best recording?
Typically, I get a handful from each student, so by all means, send a few that demonstrate range. Sometimes I also, in addition to that, I'll get a SoundCloud link and I'll go look, and there'll be like 50 tunes up there. So, don't flood me, but submit what you feel like you want to submit.
I think for my portfolio, I did 2 things that were like multi-tracked. One of them was like live multi-tracked, and you don't need extraneous gear and stuff. I think my one main multi-track recording example was I think I had 3 mics on the drums, mic on an amp, and DI for the bass. And then I did 1 or 2 tracks that I had with a band. I'm pretty sure, I think I had uploaded a found sound project I was working on, and then some electronic stuff, some more texture-y, experimental based stuff. So, if you're interested in multiple genres, definitely lean into that, because it's nice to have that range.
We had a question earlier from Ashlyn, and Ashlyn, I asked a follow-up question. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a question about required repertoire, and I just want to make sure that we get that one answered. If the question was about, is there required audition rep for the instrument or voice you're going to audition on, right? The answer is yes. I'm going to drop a link into the chat to our studios page. And so if you go to this page, you'll see all of the individual instrument studios. Recording and production is one of them, right? So don't look at that one, because you're already doing that for the portfolio that we're talking about. But for the audition, click on the area that you would audition on, and on each of those pages is listed exactly what you need to play. Oh, okay. So that's great. Thank you. We have another question up here, Michael, that maybe is best for you to answer. Is there playing involved during the studio classes, or are the playing aspects and production aspects of the curriculum kept separate? So I think that question is asking, in the audio practicum and audio production classes, are you playing while you're also producing?
No, they're separate. We're engineering and recording and producing, although you can use your own musical projects as your class projects in the engineering. So Kylan and Ben both have their own music that they're working on as part of their class projects, but we're only sitting playing in class if we happen to be doing a recording session and you're in the band. So okay, I hope that answers it.
It's a good question.
And the course content is basic electricity, basic physics of sound, microphones, input devices, multi-track recording, equalization, compression, effects, mixing, mastering, electronic production, the practice of modular synthesis, MIDI, keyboard synthesizers, drum programming, theory, a bit of electronics to understand the theory of how the equipment all works. That's the general course content with me. And then you're doing all your playing and your music theory and all that stuff with those faculty in those separate classes.
All right. Any other questions from the Participants. We know you have them. We get questions about our recording and production program all the time. I'd love to think we answered them all for you already, but I'm sure you have a few more.
Well, I tell you, while we think about that, I'll show you something. I forgot to give you a close-up. Here, hold on. Maybe this will spur another question. This is my favorite synthesizer module. This is a distortion, and it's got a xenon tube in there with, you see, energized plasma. It's like a fluorescent light. The audio signal is actually going through that tube, which is producing the distortion, plasma drive. And unlike most modules, it's got a steel cover on the back with warning stickers warning you not to open the back because there's like a couple of 100 volts back there to power that tube. It can kill you. So
Oh, man.
there you go. We have, by the way, we collaborate with other departments. We're building up formal programmatic ways of doing that. But we have students from engineering and computer science will take these classes sometimes, and you'll get to know them. I have a collaboration going on with a professor in the electronics and the engineering school. He and I are designing and building synthesizer modules. Kylan is interested in building synthesizer modules. So like outside of class time, there's all kinds of interesting stuff like that going on. We're going to build stomp boxes and yeah, all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into one of these questions here. Dustin asks if there's opportunities to double major / take lots of classes outside of Lamont. So like Professor Schulze was just mentioning, there's a lot of extracurricular type things, right? Creative work that's happening outside of the classroom that isn't credit bearing, right? Lots of great stuff, great collaborations with other folks and with Lamont students as well. But there are plenty of opportunities to also take courses outside of Lamont. So with the Bachelor of Music and Recording Production, that's a pretty credit heavy degree. But even in that degree, there are elective credits enough for a minor. So you could pursue a minor of your choosing. And then of course, like I mentioned before, there are common curriculum classes that are non-music specific, and you have some flexibility in what classes you take to satisfy the various requirements. So there's that. If you wanted to add a full other program outside of a minor, DU has a series of what they call secondary majors, which really functions like a double major, but you take the major credits, the credits required in the major, so not the electives and common curriculum courses required by that degree, but just the major credits. Let's say English, you're taking a major in English, just the English courses, and you just add them to your Bachelor of Music and Recording Production program. And there's some overlap with electives, but that would allow you to get a degree in recording art, recording production, and a secondary major in English in this example. You can also do what's called a concurrent degree, which is pretty bonkers, right? That's like 2 full degrees. If you want to do a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and a Bachelor of Music and Recording Production, we typically steer folks away from that because we don't want them to be here for 7 years. But no, there are ways. Yeah, there are ways to what we'd say, cross-pollinate with electrical engineering that wouldn't require you to be here quite so long. So Dustin, I hope that answers your question. It's a good one. Grady asks, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
Those elective credits, I believe there's 18 in the major, 18 elective credits. Some of the classes that you can absolutely take, there are film production classes that you can take as electives. There's a great class called video production for social media, which is more than the title makes it sound like. There are classes over at Emergent Digital Practices that you can take as a non-major having to do with digital art and all kinds of interesting stuff that feed into what we do.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the benefits. I don't know if Kylan and Ben have fully taken advantage of this yet or not and have anything to add, but one of the benefits of being part of a university and not a standalone music conservatory is that there are these other resources, these other disciplines that you can learn from and rub shoulders with, and hopefully generate even more creativity in your music. Grady asks about the typical audition time. So yeah, we audition incoming students, the vast majority of incoming students on 3 audition days in late January, early February. So this year it's January 29th, February 5th, and February 12th. And those are our in-person audition days. When you apply to Lamont, you can indicate kind of how you'd like to audition and which day you'd like to audition on. And if you want to come out live, we'll schedule you for one of those days or an alternate date if necessary. And you can come out and play for the faculty. You also have the ability and the option to submit a recorded audition and not travel out. That's totally okay. We'll schedule you for a Zoom interview in that case, so you have a chance still to meet the faculty and ask your questions, and they can ask questions of you, but you don't have to come out to audition in person. So yeah, that is our typical audition time in the kind of winter quarter. Jonas asked a question, what do the main production projects for freshmen look like?
We have, so this year, last fall, we went through the introductory theory. We went through stuff about microphones, and then about 2/3 of the way through the quarter, we did a recording session. Actually, I'm thinking second year, sorry, this is second year class, of music by students in the class, and the band was everybody in the class. And that music is this quarter what they are working on post-production, mixing and mastering. In the freshman year, that kind of thing can happen. It depends on who I've got in the class. I typically have a pre-recorded, like pre-recorded multi-track rock recordings when we start talking about mixing that you'll learn to mix, but it can sometimes be music by the students. If I've got enough students who are ready to do it in the freshman year, there'll be, once you're doing your own engineering, those can be like rock band that you bring in. It can be small jazz groups made up of Lamont students. Eventually, there are classical recordings, string quartets of students, large ensembles. You can be involved in the opera, the Lamont Symphony Orchestra, the jazz big band concerts. So it runs the gamut, and a lot of it can be generated by you.
There's a question in the chat that I wanted to shout out because I think that there has been some confusion among applicants this year about this. If you are a jazz applicant, say a jazz guitarist like Kyle, you will see on that studio page that I linked that there is a guitar and harp studio page or a guitar studio page. That is the classical guitar page. So if you click on that, you will see that the audition requirements are not jazz, right? That they are classical requirements. If you click on the jazz studio page, that is where you'll find the jazz requirements, which actually are the same for every instrument. It's three tunes. So if you're a jazz musician and you want to audition on a jazz instrument, go to the jazz studio and take a look at that. And you'll see a list of the instruments that fall under that studio. So I hope that's helpful for those of you that are jazzers. All right, any other questions? These have been good, folks. Thank you for asking them. Kyle or Ben, anything else you want to share about student life at Lamont or about the recording production program in general? No pressure, just anything's burning you want to share?
Or about Denver and the Front Range area.
Oh, yeah.
In here,
I think what Ben was saying, well, just about Denver in general, there's tons of like great venues and stuff for, a multitude of genres. There's great electronic venues, there's great straight rock venues, there's great like hardcore venues, lots of like in that regard, the live music is excellent. And what Ben was talking about earlier, like the close knitness of the community is really a big part. I think my class has like, how many are like actual majors? It's like me, it's like
5 or 6.
like 4. It's like 4, and then we have others that are like half majors, I think. And so yeah, you're gonna know everybody, and you're gonna like if you are someone that's creatively ambitious, there's just gonna be like an unlimited amount of extraordinarily talented musicians at Lamont for you to take advantage of. You know, I've met the greatest musicians I've ever played with in my life here. It's like not even close. So there's just lots of opportunity to be taken.
Yeah, I could, to add on to that, I can go on and on about this, but I mean, this is like, in my opinion, the electronic like hub of the country. The shows here and everything that Denver provides to like the electronic community and the culture here is like one of the most, like you could ask like some real EDM fans and they would tell you that like Boulder and Denver is kind of the hub of music, and to like Red Rocks and the Mission Ballroom and like even Boulder Theater are like one of the most craziest like shows to go to, whether if you're into EDM, rock, jazz, like rap, there's like everything for every type of person. And yeah, it's a great place to be in, especially with such developing like producers and everything. Tons of underground, a huge underground scene, and lots to discover.
And Meow Wolf is here too. Check out, if you don't know what Meow Wolf is, go take a look. They just opened in Denver, and it's so far it's promising to be a huge boost for the local arts technology scene.
Awesome. Jonas asks, do recording and production students get the same access to practice spaces as performance majors would? The official answer to this is absolutely. And Kylan and Ben, has that been your experience? Access to practice spaces?
Yeah, I was going to mention actually about that. Another great thing about the class sizes here is that most of the time there is a practice room for you to go into, whether if you're a pianist, vocalist, or other instrumentalist. There is tons of rooms. There's a room with an organ, harpsichord, recording rooms and video rooms to be on Zoom with your professors. So there's tons of there's just like tons of amenities like that for the students.
And as a BMRP major too, you're getting the same 1 hour weekly lesson with your professor. You have same access to all the ensembles. None of that is any different than a performance major.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin, sorry.
You get the chance to, you know, traditionally excel at your instrument while at the same time having access to the electronic studios and the regular like recording studio. So it's a really great thing. So you'll improve as a musician, and then as you're doing that, you'll be able to see your creative interests fully out.
Yeah, I think that there are sometimes is a misconception about music schools that there are kind of second-class citizens in different programs, right? You have the performance majors, and then you have the recording and production majors, or it may, heaven forbid, a Bachelor of Arts student, right? And that, in my opinion, and from what I've seen at Lamont, is just not the case here. That it's a tight-knit community, like we've said before, but that everyone is a valued musician, right, and has access to the same resources as anyone else, regardless of whether or not you're a performance major or a recording arts major or recording and production major or a Bachelor of Arts. All right, we're coming up on 4. Oh, good. Another question here. This is a good question from Ashlyn about, can you learn a new instrument by taking classes even though you have an emphasis in a different one? So I'll let the rest of this panel pipe in here too. There are some opportunities for this. Certainly, if you come playing another instrument, you're able to participate in ensembles on that instrument. Ensembles are open to any DU student by audition, so that applies to music majors as well. In terms of learning a new instrument, that is probably going to happen a little more informally, right? You're surrounded by musicians who are proficient on their instrument, right? So if you come in proficient on piano, but you want to learn trumpet, there's a whole studio of really qualified trumpet players here that you can work with or take lessons from on the side. We have graduate teaching assistantships or graduate teaching assistants who teach half-hour non-major lessons on their instrument. Typically, that is not for music majors to then learn another instrument. That's usually for non-music majors to learn an instrument. So there are certainly opportunities there, Ashlyn. Nothing built into the curriculum necessarily. There are some ensembles, for example, like our bluegrass ensemble does not require proficiency on any specific instrument. So that would be an opportunity for you to get in and learn something new. But there aren't secondary major lessons for beginners for music majors. Ryan, this is a good question. He asks, can you audition with just playing a rock song on guitar instead of jazz or classical? Now, Kyla, maybe I'll let you pop in on this too. What I usually instruct students to do, Ryan, is reach out to the professor on that instrument. So in this case, it'd be Professor Mike Abbott, and just get an idea of kind of what they teach, what they're interested in doing, and then tell them what you are interested in playing and what you would like to do, and figure out whether or not that's going to work. Because ultimately, your development on your instrument is really between you and the studio professor. So kind of when I look up Mike's email address to drop into the chat, do you have anything to add to that? I can't remember what you played for your audition.
Yeah, so if you're a guitarist that's mostly like rock oriented, I was actually the same. I was pretty unproficient at jazz before coming here and starting. That is okay. However, you still will need to learn those 3 tunes to get in with your regular audition. However, if you have like rock performances that you feel like more strongly represent what you're interested in doing in the recording program, then by all means include that in your portfolio, have that as your emphasis. However, you are still going to be participating in jazz ensembles. We have a guitar ensemble. But if you are just getting started, the resources are here, and Mike Abbott is completely used to working with guitarists that come in from a mainly rock background and get them up to speed with the jazz stuff. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you're more rock oriented. However, you do still need to put in the work for the 3 audition tunes.
And Mike Abbott is monster guitar player. Monster means terrific. And he plays, he doesn't play classical guitar, but he plays just about everything else. He plays rock, he plays jazz. So he's open to working with you.
Oh, okay. Brian has a question about housing, which I'll answer first, but then Kylan and Ben, maybe you can share some of your experiences about setting up housing and kind of what you've done. He asks, what's the housing setup at DU? Do Lamont music students get grouped in specific dorms, or do you mix with the broader campus members? So you will fill out a housing application once you decide to come to DU as a first-year student. There's a 2-year on-campus living requirement. And that application will mix you with broader campus members. There isn't a dedicated music dorm that every music major is assigned to. You will rub shoulders with non-music majors. And then my understanding is that in your second year, that second year requirement, you have a little more flexibility, a little more power over the process, so you can kind of group as you see fit. Anything you'd add to that, Ben or Kylan?
Yeah, there's not really like a music specific dorm. You're just gonna have a roommate, typical as most other places. But considering how small Lamont is, if you're spending a lot of time there, then it'll be just like a same type of community, but no specific like music dorm.
Yeah, I think we normally have a harder time getting musicians to go out and hang out with non-musicians versus the other way around. So that's an opportunity to kind of expand your social network, as it were.
Agreed.
All right, we had this scheduled till 5. So we have a little more time for questions. And of course, if there are no questions, we'll call it early. But so we call this last call for questions. Any burning questions that you're just getting up the nerve to ask or just occurred to you? I'm going to drop my contact info in the chat. If you have any questions that pop up later, shoot them over to me. And if I can't answer them, I'll find somebody who can. Oh, there's a good question. Okay, is there preferred length for portfolio recordings? Michael?
Not really. One or two, 3 to 4 minute pieces would be a minimum. Like at least 1 or 2 complete songs, or jazz piece, or short classical piece, or whatever you're submitting.
For those of you who are,
And that, those submissions, it is competitive. I mean, we do look at the quality of the engineering. That's not all we look at. It's not the sole determining factor, but coming out of high school, very few students submit anything that sounds professional, because you're in high school. So don't worry about that. The point is for you to do the best you can with what you got. Colin was talking about his drum sound that he got with 3 microphones. We rarely record a drum set with only 3 microphones, but he did, and it sounded really good for a 3 microphone drum sound. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking, evidence of how good you are, but also your enthusiasm and how knowledgeable you are about what you can do with what you have, as opposed to sending in something that sounds like a Grammy-winning engineering job. That's not the point.
For what it's worth, that bears out from my perspective, Michael. I don't know anything about this discipline, and I'll see applications come in and I'll be like, wow, look at that, that's pretty impressive. And you'll find that less interesting, right, in some cases, than something that somebody did on a much smaller setup, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But to make your point that it's not just about that polish, right? You're looking for some of that potential as well. Which incidentally, I would say is true also about auditions. They know that, if you're a 17-year-old cellist, you're not going to sound like Yo-Yo Ma. They're listening for technical proficiency for sure, but our faculty are very good at hearing potential and hearing whether or not they can work and make something really work with you to further your ambition. I was going to mention really quickly about the how long the portfolio should be. Just once again to clarify, right, that there's that portfolio and then there's your audition. There are some areas where your audition is a required length. Actually, I think piano is one of them, right? You need 20 minutes of audition rep on piano. And so if you submit a recorded audition for your piano audition, you will need to hit that limit. So just another reminder to check both places. Check the recording and production page for the portfolio information, and then your studio page for the audition information. They will be different. All right. Well, unless someone slips a question in there in the next few seconds, I'll thank Professor Schulze and Kylan and Ben. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge of this program and your experience going through it. It's been, I hope, very helpful for our attendees. And all of you attendees, thank you for coming. Please get in touch if you have questions about anything related to the music admission process or the recording production program. We'd be happy to answer it. And we look forward to helping you through the process and hopefully seeing you in the fall when the time comes, when we start classes up then. All right, thanks so much for being here. Have a great night. Have a great weekend.